1977, you introduced tax incentives for solar collectors, really the first of its kind anywhere in the world. You obviously had a vision for what was then called alternative energy. How has energy evolved in a way that you expected and a way that you didn't expect, in a way that's exciting and in a way that's frustrating?
Well, first of all, the tax credit was 55% for the installation of solar collectors, mostly heating hot water from the sun, and also a 25% tax credit for conservation improvements. The first thing I would note is we didn't even think of the cost of that. We just didn't even think of the cost. Later, many years later, I found out it cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And today, when you talk about a tax credit, they score it very precisely. So in those days, tax credits were just free virtue, at least in our minds. And that was nice, because nobody put up any resistance and there were no votes.
Those were the good times.
Those were the good times. Of course, California at that time, a year later, had a $6 billion surplus on a $24 billion budget, as compared or contrasted with the $26 billion deficit that I inherited on a $90 billion budget. So the world evolved in some different, in some ways, negative ways.
That I hope was somebody else's fault.
Yes, that was the mess that I inherited. Yeah. By the way, every governor usually inherits a mess.
And it's worse when they come into office than they thought before.
I didn't inherit a mess, if I could just put in a little plug here, because I'm dealing with the Wall Street Journal. Ronald Reagan doubled the state income tax, and that was one of the contributing factors to our $6 billion surplus. Or at least it wasn't an impediment, let me put it that way. So there's a lot of reasons why economies grow and why California grew, but it was a very exciting time coming out of the oil embargo. And there was that sense of vulnerability. So that gave a real impetus. We have to do something about efficiency and alternatives to oil. And then, of course, the pollution. And California has always been a leader. If we go back to it, and it's not been a Democrat or a Republican idea. It started with Richard Nixon in the White House and Ronald Reagan as governor of California. And California got a special permission to be able to set its own vehicle emission standards. And that, going forward, allowed California to set the first greenhouse gas emission standards for automobiles. And ultimately, that was adopted by the federal government after many lawsuits and lots of battles. But how it evolved, it ramped up quickly. We didn't know quite where we were going in those days. But by the mid-'80s, California had over 90% of the wind generated electrical energy in the whole world. Then the oil prices collapsed. Solar energy became kind of a no-no in certain quarters, and we lost a lot of ground. One thing that really did last, though, was the efficiency standards. This is the Title 24. California adopted very strenuous building standards that were tailored to different climate regions in the state, and those standards have been updated. As a result, I think reasonable estimates show Californians have saved about $50 billion over that time. Lots of jobs created, and we set the pace for the nation. And then we did also lay the foundation for renewable energy, cogeneration, which wasn't always renewable, but it was third-party, independent power, more deregulating the markets. So California, not only an alternative energy, but a different model from the utility model was definitely attempted and pushed in many ways. But again, that was more than 30 years ago. So the point is, you have to think big, think long, but you don't get there overnight.